Okay, good night guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a video on subnetting and building a network in Packet Tracer. Now if you noticed, I went ahead to lay out all my devices and also subnetted for my 3 networks that are required. The instructions said don't use the 0 network, hence it's omitted. So we are starting from 192.168.1.32, right? And it's also at /34 when it was previously at /27 when it was previously at /24. And explaining that, we obviously borrowed 3 bits to get our new subnet mask, which is now 224. Right, our magic number would be 32. We went to 32 based on the amount of hosts that we need. The next available host below that, I believe it would have been, I say, too exact per se, so at least we have some wiggle room with adding any more hosts just in case. And saying exact meaning that yes, it would have been enough, but I believe adding a little bit more should be sufficient. So without further ado, let us begin with building out our network. So let's start from PC1, and we'll use a copper straight through because we are using a switch to connect our devices. So let's start PC1 fast Ethernet to our switch on 0/0 interface, 0/1 interface, and then we'll go from the switch on 1/1 to the router at 0/0 interface. Alright, so let's do it on the other side now, from PC2 to the switch, and then from the switch to the router. And then to connect our 2 routers together, we'll use a serial cable, right? And you go from serial 2/0 to serial 2/0. Right, so our devices are powering up right now. Yes, so first thing first, let's go into our computer, our first PC here. Let's go to desktop, IP config, and let's begin setting our static IPs, our static IP to our computer. And our instructions are to give it the last address. Now the last usable address within the first network would be 62. So let's do that. 192.168.1.62. Subnet mask, set it at 224, and our default gateway would be the IP address of our router, which will get the first address in our network, and that is 1.33. So let's type in that 192.168.1.33. right, and there you go. Our interface on our PC is set. We can close this for now. Let's move on to our router. Now router 1 gets the first address so yes, router 1 gets the first address, which will be set on our 0/0 interface. There you can see there is no set IP on the interface currently, so let's go into our router. Now we can set our IP address here, but let's go into our CLI and set up our required interfaces. So here you can see our config interface facilitated 0/0 selected. We are in config terminal mode, so we can go ahead and add our IP address to our interface. 192.168.1.33, the subnet mask 224. We are going to hit no shutdown on our interface, and we can hit end, and we can save our configuration. Enter, and if we go back to config now, there you can see our IP address is added to our interface, and the port is now up. So we can close this for a while, and let's move on to PC2. Right, same procedure as before. Now we can set it up here, or we can go into desktop IP configuration. Right, and PC2 is getting the last IP address in network 3, so that's 192.168.1.126. our subnet mask is 224, and our default gateway is the first address in network 3 for our router, and that would be 97. So 192.168.1.97. Right, our computer is set up with its IP address, and now let's move on to our router. Right, again, you can set it up here. Let's go to our CLI. Alright, now I can just come back out here, and let's go in from the start. So click enable, and we click conf t, then we type in our interface, fast Ethernet 0/0, click enter, and then we give it its IP address 192.168.1. and remember, it's getting the first address in network 3, which is 97, and we apply subnet mask 255.255.255.224. press enter. We also hit no shutdown on this interface, confirmation that that was set. We can click end, and we can save our configuration. So copy, run, start. Right, and our configuration should be here. Right, there you can see it's there. Right, we can close it now, close this now, and now we need to get communication between our two routers via the serial port. Right, so let's start with router 1. Right, Okay, let's go interface, sorry, let's go conf t, let's go interface serial 2/0. Now we need to give this interface the IP address it's supposed to be assigned, so IP address, and it will be the first address in network 2, which will be 65, so 192.168.1.65 subnet mask 224, and we can hit no shutdown on this interface. And then we can hit end and save our configuration. Right, and then we can go to router 2. Right, you just do this from here. We can go to router 2 and set up the IP address for our serial port, which is getting the last address in network 2. Alright, so that will be 94, 192.168.1.94 subnet mask 4, and because this is the DCN of the connection, we will set a clock rate and make sure no shutdown is set on our interface. Right, that's configured. Now the last thing that we have to do is basically get router 1, or shouldn't say router 1, basically get PC1 to communicate with PC2. Now if we just go here and try to communicate with PC2, remember PC2's IP address is 126. Right, so let's try pinging it. 92.168.1.126. There you can see the host is unreachable, and that's because we need to configure our next hop. We need to set up our static route to basically get the communication between the three networks that are set up here. So PC1 will be able to communicate with PC2. Right? So how do we do that? So we go in, firstly we go into router 1. Right, we can do this via the CLI. So we go into router 1, enter conf t. Right, and what we are going to do is set up a static IP route. So we say IP route, and we are going to communicate with our network, which would be the third network. We need to get the communication towards the third network. So what we're going to do is enter the network ID of the third network, which is 192.168.1.96. We're going to set the subnet mask 224, and we are going to do that connection via 192.168.1.94. Right, so 94 would be the last address in router 2, right? As you can see here, that'll be router 2 serial port. So that is the communication that or the link we are establishing, that we want to let router 1 reach router 3 via the serial port IP address. Okay, and we can hit enter, and we can hit end, and then we can copy, run, start to save our configuration. And if we go config and we go static, there you can see our static route is or has been configured, right? And let's close this one and do the same thing on router 2. Alright, so let's go CLI. We can say IP route 192.168.1. And here we are trying to get to network 1. So network 1's network ID is 192.168.1.32. a subnet mask at 255.255.255.224, and we are trying to make that connection via 192.168.1.65, which is the serial port of our first router, right? The 2/0 interface, right? That's the IP address that we set for that router on the serial port. So okay, we can hit end, enter, and then hit end, and then copy, run, start. Right, verify that it has been set, and yes, it has been. So we can close this. So now, with all these things configured, now we should be able to run that test we did earlier and try to communicate with PC2. So let's see if that happens. So let's open command prompt again, and let's try to ping PC2 now. 192.168.1. PC2's address is 126, and let's see. Right, there you can see. Let's try that again. I think there's something when had a little glitchy moment there just now. Let's try that again. So 192.168.1.126. Press enter, and there you can see from before we couldn't communicate with PC2, and now communication, and now we are able to ping PC2. Right, we can also ping our routers 192.168.1. And our router, let's try router 2, which has an IP address, if I remember clearly, sorry, which has an IP address of 197. Right, let's ping that router. Right, there you can see we can ping our router in a different network. Right, so so I hope this was enjoyable. I hope you all learned something today, and yes, thank you for tuning in, and see you in my next video.